I'm going to be, introducing the next speaker, and she's a lovely, lovely, lovely lady by the name Nicole D. Evans. She's a wife, she's a mom, she's a published author, transformational speaker, minister, life coach, creative, and thought leader. As an apostolic leader, she has spent the last 15 years serving leaders in the non-profit and business sector, using her skills to advance visions and build productive teams. Her expertise includes bringing visions to life. She transforms thoughts into tangible outcomes. Nicole also impacts people through a dynamic transformational coaching. As a life coach, she specializes in execution for emerging leaders. I love that word emerging, by the way. And I have my reasons for saying that. For women of faith, Nicole's newest book, Getting It Done, a guide to effective execution for Christians, includes our original Done framework, which is DONE framework, which teaches how to implement value-based goals that result in authentic, again, the word authenticity is coming to place now, purposeful productivity and effective execution. As a consultant, Nicole provides strategic consulting solutions for organizational effectiveness and project management for small businesses and churches. Can we see how everything is aligning here, right? I'm not going to do Nicole's job for her, but I'm so excited to hear you speak, ma'am. And with Jesus' joy, I just want us to again welcome Nicole Evans to share with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that introduction. I am so honored to be here and so excited to share what God has given me on this morning on effective execution and mindset, because the mind is very, very, very important. So grace and peace to all of you who are here this morning. Feel free to drop any questions in the chat as we go along. And so I'm just going to jump right in. I do not have any slides, so please take notes. There's quite a bit of information here. Please forgive me for not preparing those slides for you. But we're just going to get right into this. And so effective execution is a term that you do not hear often. And the Holy Spirit gave me this term about a year ago. And so I'm just going to explain it, but I'm going to give you some history on what it looks like and what it means for everyday person, especially us women who are multifaceted women who are walking in purpose and want to be authentic in doing so. And so we know in Genesis chapter 1 that God created the earth. And when he created the earth, he literally designed it with purpose. So he gives us light, he gives us sky, land, grass, the sea, the stars, everything in alignment. And so he literally creates earth with a purpose, and that purpose was for mankind. Okay, that purpose was for mankind to exist on this earth that he created. And so once he was done with every bit of the creation on earth, he looked at all of it and said, it's good. It's ready for my final creation, which is you and I. And so in Genesis 1:26, we see that he creates man, and man is the species, right? It's male and female. And he created man in his image, and his image means characteristics or qualities. And so when we look at who God is, we have those same characteristics and qualities. Number one, being a creator, because he is a creator. And when he created us, he blessed us. He blessed us to be able to do four things. To number one, be fruitful and multiply. Number two, to replenish the earth. And you can see all of this in Genesis 1:26-27. Number three, to subdue the earth. And number four, to have dominion in the earth over the resources, not people. So he told us to be fruitful and multiply, to replenish the earth, to subdue the earth, and to have dominion. To be fruitful means to bear fruit, to grow, to show evidence of your existence. To multiply means to increase, to continue to excel, to process even over time. To replenish means to fulfill or satisfy the purpose of the existence. To subdue means to overcome or bring it under control. And dominion means to rule, a sovereignty over a territory. So God said, I want you to go into the earth, and I want you to be fruitful. I want you to grow in it. And I want the world to see the evidence of your existence. I want you to multiply everything that your hand touches. I want it to multiply. I want the world to see how much your impact can grow over time, because you're going to be impacting people. You're going to be impacting territories. You're going to be impacting businesses. You're going to be impacting nations. And so then he says, I want you to satisfy your purpose by doing this, right? And I want you to subdue it, overcome anything that comes in your way. And then I want you to rule over all of the resources that you're going to need. Call the resources that you need to fulfill your purpose to you. That is what he's saying here. And so this is man's general purpose. This is effective execution for the entire human race. All of us were sent here to be fruitful and multiply, to replenish, to subdue, and to have dominion. That is generally what God said for all of us to do. So now that we know what we all are supposed to be doing, let's deep dive what we should be doing individually and what it actually means to effectively execute. So to understand this, we have to know, let's define what effective execution is, okay? And let me know if I'm going too fast, please. Effective execution is the prioritization of goals in alignment with your identity and or purpose, whether it is your assignment for a season or it is directly related to your purpose, okay? And I love how my good sister said that in her presentation the last session, talking about those values that are in alignment with who we are. It's absolutely on point with what I'm referring to as well. And so effective execution is also the culmination of a healthy mindset. It's understanding my identity and the utilization of my gifts and talents and skills, goals, and the strategy to attain those goals. I did see a question about saying the definition. So effective execution is the prioritization of goals in alignment with your identity and or purpose, whether it is an assignment or is directly related to your purpose. So sometimes we're in seasons where our assignment may look different than our full general picture purpose that God has given us individually. So sometimes you could be on a job and God is teaching you lessons through leadership or just different opportunities, which God will use later in life when you fully step into who God has created you to be. Okay. So in short, effective execution is getting things done in alignment with who you are. In short, effective execution is getting things done in alignment with who you are. So the most important component of effective execution is our identity. Who am I? What do I value? We hear again with those values. And what are my gifts and talents? Or what are the skills that I have acquired that's going to help me effectively execute? So to dive into these questions, the first thing we want to do is go to Matthew chapter 6, verse 21. And Jesus says, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. So in other words, what we value will be evident in our actions. What we value will be evident in our actions. We find this in Matthew 6 and 21. So our values can be characteristics. And my good sister, again, had a great illustration of different types of values. So it could be characteristics. It could be a quality, a milestone, position, status, a project, or even an assignment. And so what helps me to identify my values, and as she said, in different seasons, they may change. So you want to conduct an audit of your time. You want to conduct an audit of your time and your tasks to really identify what your values are and to gain a better understanding of who you are in this season. because we change. We're going to evolve. The Bible says we go from glory to glory. So who I am today is going to be different from who I'll be in 5 years or next year, right? Because as I'm committing myself to God, God is growing, maturing me in my spirit man. And so I have, we're going to go on to the next part. So just be sure, and this was my experience. I want to be sure that we focus on the person that God created before the foundations of the world, not the person who society has shaped or our experiences have evolved us into, or even our traumatic experiences may have tripped us up. Because for me, traumatic experiences, I adopted some of those consequences as a part of who I was. And God, as I committed my life to him, he began to heal me. And I began to see that some of those things that I adopted were not who God created me to be. It was just who I had adopted. Okay, so let's be mindful of who we are, the God-formed version that he said in Jeremiah 1:5, before I formed you. And we know that Genesis 2:7 says that he formed us, right? In our mother's womb. He knew us before we even manifested in this world. And so we want to refer to that person. And so God has given us an identity before we had any part to play in it, okay? So we're going to transition to get a better understanding of who you are through your value, your time, and your task. We want to move on to looking at the gifts that God has given us individually, okay? And so in Matthew 25, there is a wonderful parable, the parable of the 10 talents. If you are familiar with this, if you're not familiar with this, the more I read it, the more understanding I gain from it. But it is a parable about a master who gives out talents to 3 individuals. To one individual, he gives 5 talents. To another individual, he gives 2 talents. And to another, he gives 1 talent. Well, the one that received 5 talents multiplied his, right? We're talking about be fruitful and multiply as in Genesis 1. The one with 2 talents multiplied his. And same thing, fruitful and multiply. We are increasing, right? And so the person with 1 talent buried his. And it took me to a place when I read the text, and it said when they were presenting their gifts back to the master, he said, you wicked person. He called him wicked because he did not multiply his talents, right? His talents, excuse me. So there are 2 truths that we want to take away from Matthew 25, that God gives us talents to fulfill our purpose. And these are things that we're born with, right? These are not skills. Skills are acquired. So any of us can learn skills, but there are some things that are unique to our personality, unique to our purpose that God has given each and every one of us. And then the second thing is it is absolutely sinful for us not to do what God created us to do. Can you imagine that? That when we create something, it's almost like you get a remote control, right? You're trying to use it to turn the TV on. And when the TV is not working, you're like, what's going on? Why are you not doing what you were created to do? Right. And so it's the same thing with us. God has created us. He gave us a mandate, and then he gave us specific things that we're supposed to do individually and the resources to carry that out. So you were created, with a general and a specific mandate. Then he gives us the tools to fulfill those mandates, right? Those are our gifts. Those are our talents. That's even our time and our energy and our focus. But let's expose the enemy of action, the enemy that will come against all of those things that God has given us, right? Those are called obstacles. So the biggest obstacle that we face every single day is having the wrong mindset. The biggest obstacle to execution is the wrong mindset. How do I view myself? How do I view my impact in my circles, in the circle of influence that God has given me? How do I view myself when I'm around others, especially people that I admire? Do I shrink back? Do I conform to those around me? Do I silence myself? Do I become obnoxious or loud? Or do I remain authentically myself in the midst of those people? So those are just a few questions to help us understand how we're viewing ourselves, because If I don't view myself the way God views me, I won't be able to fulfill the mandate that he's placed on my life. So how we feel about ourselves, the thoughts we believe and entertain, which come from our heart, out of the heart flows the issues of life, greatly impact our ability to effectively execute. What does your behavior say about your beliefs? Procrastination is a big enemy of execution. And procrastination is also rooted in our self-worth. So how I feel about myself is directly related to procrastination. Perfectionism, comparison that leads to jealousy, because it's healthy to look at somebody else and say, man, I admire that. Like she said before, you look at those qualities and you say, I admire those qualities about that person. That's a healthy type of comparison. But a comparison that leads to jealousy is not healthy, right? Because we're all amazing. We're all creatures that God created, right? And we're all given a mandate to be amazing in this earth. So let's look at some biblical examples of people who had some mindset issues. The first one is going to be Barak. Barak is found in Judges chapter 4. Barak is a leader in the army, and he is an example of having the wrong mindset. Okay, so in Judges chapter 4, verse 6, Deborah, who is a judge and a prophetess at this time, gives Barak a word from the Lord, a set of instructions. And she said, go and deploy the troops. So, and God will give you the hand of the enemy. All you have to do, Barak, is simply show up. That is all Barak has to do, is gather the troops and show up. And she said, God has already given you the hand of the enemy. And so in verse 8 of chapter 6, Barak says, he declines. He said, if you go, I'll go, but I'm not going to go by myself. Now, keep in mind, Barak has mandated, right, for this particular set of instructions. He's the leader. He's the one who has the ability to win. He's done this before. He was created for this, yet he felt inadequate. And so Deborah lets him know that because of his disobedience, that the outcome of the battle was going to be given to a woman. Okay. And so you can read that in Judges 6, chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. So that's Barak, having the wrong mindset, not doing what you were created to do because you feel inadequate. The second person we're going to look at is what I call the growth mindset. Is Gideon. And so Gideon in Judges chapter, Barak is Judges chapter 4. Gideon is Judges chapter 6. That's a typo. So when Gideon comes, there is, of course, the Israelites had done evil in the sight of the Lord. And so God gives them over to the Midianites. And so Gideon is frustrated. If I serve this God, why is he allowing all of this stuff to happen? Why are our people oppressed? And he's going on and venting about what is happening to his people. And so in Judges 6, the Lord comes to him and says, mighty man of valor, have I not sent you? And so here's the thing about purpose. A lot of times what we don't understand about purpose is what frustrates us is usually, we're usually the answer for the frustration, right? And so Gideon sees that he's frustrated with his people being oppressed, and God calls him to be the people's deliverer. So what is frustrating you is something that is particular to you, that God may be calling you to be the deliverer, to be the solutioner, to be the problem solver for that. That may be your purpose. You ask yourself, why is this bothering me? Why is this frustrating me? Okay, so God was speaking to him and calling him up. He immediately addressed him, mighty man of valor, have I not sent you? And so what did Gideon do in response to that? He made excuses. And y'all understand, sometimes when God gives us something to do, an assignment, who, me? God, you talking to me? You sure you want me to do it? Gideon said, I am the least in my father's house. I am the weakest among all of my siblings. You sure you want me to be the deliverer? Such a great call. And God isn't looking at how we view ourselves. He's looking at his creation, and he's saying, I created you with a purpose, and I've given you every resource to effectively execute. This is what God is saying to Gideon. And he has a lot of excuses. And then he does what we do too. He said, I need a sign. So he doesn't decline. He says, give me a sign, give me confirmation. I need a word. I want to make sure this is you, God. And in Judges 6:17. So the angel of the Lord gives him a sign, because God knows where we are. And like you said, we're not trying to be perfect, right? We're just trying to show some effort. We're just trying to show up, and God sees where we are, and he knows exactly what we need. He knows exactly what we need. So in that moment, Gideon needed that sign for him to go and show up. And we know that eventually he went on to be successful. He won the battle, and God took him through some more tests after that. And the third one we're going to look at, this one's it's my favorite because it's Women's History Month. And and this is a women's event, so I want to make sure that we highlight the powerful women of God in the Bible that we can relate to. So the final one is having the right mindset. And these are the daughters of Zelophehad in Numbers 27. 5 powerful, courageous, bold, intelligent women who were not afraid of the call. So in Numbers 27, these 5 sisters, their father passes away. And in this time, the law was set up that if your father dies and he does not have any sons, the girls do not get the inheritance. So it would go to either the son. If there's no son, then it goes to the father's brothers. If the father doesn't have any brothers, it will go to the next male in line. And so the ladies, they would have literally been on their own. There was no way for them to look after themselves. And so as soon as it happened, in Numbers 27:3, it says, our father died in the wilderness, but he was not in the company of those who gathered together against the Lord. And so he died in his own sin, and he had no sons. So immediately these women stepped up and they approached Moses and the elders and say, hey, this isn't fair. I think we need to revisit this. But their boldness is what caught Moses. And Moses immediately took their petition to God. And what did God say? Give those women what they need. And not only did it affect them, they were able to receive their inheritance, but it changed the trajectory for women throughout the Bible. So I'm going to say that there are some women that are listening right now who have the boldness, who have the courage, who have the resources, who have the intelligence, who have everything they need to stand up and be bold in this time period. And God is calling you now to arise so that you can go out and effectively execute, and to know that you have the grace. The sisters, there were 5 sisters, and 5 means the number of grace. So you are graced to do it, regardless of what it looks like, regardless of the opposition, regardless of the support, regardless of how you feel about yourself, regardless of how your outlook and your perspective on life is. God is calling you, and he's going to equip you, and the grace is going to enable you to do every single part of it. Every single part of it. And he's going to stir you up to do it. Some of you are stirred right now. The Bible says that as a man thinketh, so is he. So what you believe right now, as you are hearing it, do not let the enemy snatch these thoughts from you. We have over 7,000 thoughts per day. Some of them are ours, some of them are the enemy, and some of them are from the Holy Spirit. But what we're going to do is cast down every thought that would try to exalt itself against the knowledge of God. Right? We're going to think on things that are true. What does the Bible say about me? We're going to think on things that are praiseworthy. What has God done in my life? How has he been faithful to me and my family and my life? Right? We're going to think on things that are noble. We're going to think on all the things that God has been good to us in. Right? And how are we going to do this? I have an acronym for MIND, M-I-N-D. We're going to manage the internal navigation of the data that enters our mind, right? So when a thought enters, we're going to assess it. What is this thought? Is this something God would tell me? If it's not, we're going to get rid of that thought, because that thought is not pushing me towards what God is telling me to do. So we're going to have to also be mindful of the data that we allow to access our mind, right? Through TV shows or gossip blogs or just negative conversations. In this season, y'all, we want to be careful of the words that we're saying, because life and death is in the power of the tongue, and God is honoring words. So you want to make sure that you're speaking life. You don't want to fill yourself with negativity, because if I fill myself with that, it's going to flow from me. So we don't want to even rehash offenses in our minds. We want to let go of anything, any offenses people have committed against us. We want to just let that go, because forgiveness ain't for them, it's for us. Because in my Bible, in Matthew 18, it says, if I don't forgive, number one, I'm putting myself in a prison. I'm putting myself in a prison. It's chaotic, it's confusion, it's torment. And then it says that God won't forgive us. If we want our lives to look good, we got to walk in forgiveness, right? We got to walk in forgiveness. And then I also want to be mindful of what kind of music I listen to, because whatever plants, right? We talked about this in Genesis 1, we're being fruitful and we're multiplying. So whatever I plant is going to grow. Whatever I plant is going to grow. Whatever seeds I allow to marinate, to build, is going to grow. So we just want to be mindful of what we're allowing to enter our minds, right? So we don't want to let the enemy defeat us before we get started, because every person on this conference is called to do something great. You're called to influence. You're called to make change. You're called to break generational curses. You're called to do all of these amazing things, right? You're called to effectively execute. And I'm going to leave you all with my signature framework. It's in my book. All of this is in great details in my book, but it's time to execute. We're at the realignment retreat, because sometimes, we get distracted, especially right now with what's happening in the world, but Jesus has overcame the world. So we're going to stay focused on what God has called us to do, because even though that is happening, there is an ark like Noah built. There's an ark of safety. There's an ark of covenant that we are covered under, so that we can keep going and doing what God has called us to do. So you and I, we are covered under the blood of Jesus. We are covered because of the covenant that Jesus gave us. Right. And so we're going to continue to effectively execute regardless of what is happening. We're going to realign with what God has called us to do. And so one of the ways we're going to do this is through this signature framework. So you're going to write down the word done, DONE. The D stands for define your value. So as my good sis talked about it before, what are your values? What are those core values, right? Or your value could be your business. It could be an organization. It could be ministry. It could be whatever that thing is. You want to define it right there. Write it out. It could be fitness, wellness, or motherhood. It could be your professional career, right? Because we're all doing this differently. We're not all entrepreneurs. Some of us are working 9 to 5s. Whatever the capacity of life that we're in, we want to make sure that we have something that fits it, because effective execution isn't just about entrepreneurship. It's about life and being in alignment with who God has called us to be. So the first one is define your value. Then the O stands for organize your goals and objectives. So I'm going to write down my goals, and then underneath the goal for underneath each goal, I'm going to write objectives. So these are actionable steps to carry out those goals. Okay. So the N is to neutralize the obstacles. So I want to list every single obstacle that could come against me accomplishing my goal or getting out of alignment with my value. That could be my cell phone, that could be time, that could be relationships, that could be mindset, how I think about my project. That could be feeling like I don't have the resources, whatever possible obstacle that could come in your way. You want to make sure that you list it, because we want to expose the enemy, right? The enemy is going to show up in any type of way he can. So we want to beat him to the punch and submit these to prayer. The last one is E, equipped with resources. So you're going to look at your goals and you're going to see, what resources do I need to accomplish this goal? What do I need? Do I need a budget, a certain amount of money? Do I need people, a team? Do I need a certain software? Do I need a certain amount of time? What is it that's going to help you be successful in accomplishing the goal? So the point of this framework is to help you execute. And you can use it over and over and over and over. Whenever you get ready to do something, especially when it comes to projects, assignments, or your core values, it works with all of them. And so just to wrap things up, God gave us the ultimate value when he breathed life into each and every one of us. And now it's our turn to exhale and execute that same value in the earth. You are valuable. What you have is valuable. Your gifts are valuable. Your existence is valuable. And we need you in this earth to effectively execute the way that God intended.